again, making money to me didn't equate to wealth. And then I really didn't understand how to actually build wealth until I was well into my 30s. Like I said, I have been making six figures a long time, even before I was a nurse. Like, with all my income, like I always had side hustles and all this kind of stuff. So I always made really good money, but I just did not know what to do with that money. But to other people, they thought I had it all figured out because it looked like, because I knew how to make money, I had money. But I knew that it wasn't the same thing because I always felt really broke.
Hey, babe, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking to Naseema McElroy, and I'm really excited. She has the best content on social media with her sweet girls. And I have several friends that are nurses, and I know how hard they work and how much potential is out there. But I also know that several of them are not maximizing. And so we are talking to Naseema today to learn all the things about how to get that bag and to maximize all of the income and really live the life of your dreams because she knows that life. So I'm really excited. Naseema, welcome to the Sugar Daddy podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that intro. It was
Oh,
great.
yes. Well, listen, I know how hard you guys work, and there's just so much to that job, right? And it's so underappreciated. And I mean, not even talking about COVID, right? I mean, that was just a disaster. So thank you for your service. But
Definitely.
I just want to make sure our goal is always for our friends to get to whatever level it is they're trying to get to so that we can get to Bora Bora together. Okay? That's the ultimate goal.
I love it. Yes, yes, yes,
We
yes.
want to be like, hey, Bora Bora next week. You ready? And everybody's ready. That's the goal, you know?
That's right.
Yes.
I love it.
Well, for anybody
Mhm.
listening who is not familiar with you, we're going to get into this bio and then we're going to talk about your first money memory, okay?
Okay.
Naseema is a published author and the founder of Financially Intentional, a platform about personal finance and living life intentionally. She discusses how taking control of her finances has enabled her to overcome bankruptcy, divorce, and break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. She shares her lessons along her path to help others benefit from the freedoms of financial independence. Outside of encouraging people to get their financial act together, Naseema is a mother and labor and delivery nurse. Though making six figures for years, she struggled with money. Finally, realizing she couldn't out earn her financial ignorance, she knew she had to make some changes. By shifting her mindset around money, being consistent and intentional, she has paid off $1 million in debt and grew a six figure net worth in 3 years without living in deprivation. What an amazing bio. We are so glad to have you on today. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Naseema, what is your first money memory?
Wow. When I was growing up, I remember just having to work at a really young age because my dad was an entrepreneur and he used to work at a flea market. It's a pretty famous flea market now. So it's this flea market in Berkeley, the Ashby Flea Market. And just having to work for money in order to like buy toys. So I knew that, there was this exchange of money that has to happen or the exchange of time and effort for money and then to buy things. But I always like had this feeling like there was never enough. But other than that, like money wasn't really talked about in my house, besides the fact that I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have access to a lot of money unless I made it myself, which I actually started making money at a really early age because I was raised by a single dad and he didn't know how to do our hair. And so I had to learn how to braid at 5. And so
Wow.
I started braiding other people's hair and making my own money. So my earliest money lesson was that if I wanted money, I'd have to work for
Wow. Okay, so working at 5, how old were you
it.
when you were at the flea market working?
That was like, I don't know. I like my earliest memories were there. So that was I don't know, 3, 4, 5,
Oh my
6.
goodness.
Like he sells incense and body oil, so we knew how to make incense. We knew how to pour oils in bottles, make bath salts, like all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'm hearing that we are not working our children enough. That's what I got from that.
I mean, I could have told you that before this conversation.
Oh my, like I am dreaming of the day when Aston can do her own hair because she complains about how I do it. And my immediate response is always, okay, so let's learn. Let's learn how to do it. Because then she's like, no, 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 it's too much and I don't want to. But I'm like, wait a minute. I'm going to be like, Auntie Naseema said that you need to start doing your own hair.
You know what is crazy though? I struggle with this too because I was working so early, and I'll always be like, "Are my kids like slow or something?" Because how come they don't
No,
know how
they're
to
just
do this? And
living,
then I
Different
think back
generation.
like, "Oh, they're actually just being
they're
kids,
just living
right?"
the plush life.
Like I
Exactly.
wasn't allowed to like, I wasn't really allowed to be a kid. So I'm just like, so I go back and forth in my head about that.
Oh,
So
well, I'm glad that we get to give our children the life that we want to, that good, plush, happy child life that I feel like I had it. I know that you had it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry that you didn't, but we can change all the things that we didn't like in our upbringing now that we have our own children, which I think is such a blessing. So,
Where are your parents from?
definitely.
Okay.
Oakland. Right.
I wasn't
They're
sure
not
if it was the
immigrants or
first.
usually
anything. My
that's an
dad's from
immigrant
Oakland. My mom
type
is from
conversation.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. No,
Love
we
that.
from Oakland.
Naseema, why don't you give us some background? Because there was a lot in this bio, right? We had bankruptcy, we have
Mhm.
divorce, you're working, you're a mom, now you're building your wealth, now you're helping others build wealth. So, can you walk us through kind of that story and that journey that you've been on? We'd love to know more about that.
So, I mean, I think I already prefaced this, but I've been making money from an early age. So, making money to me was never like an issue. But I was never taught about real wealth, right? But I grew up in like West Oakland, which is kind of a hood, but I went to school in the hills, Oakland Hills, with like when I was like me and my sister were the only black people in the whole school. And so we were surrounded by wealth, but it always looked unattainable for us because the people who were wealthy didn't look like us and didn't live where we lived, right? And so I always thought that that was for someone else. So like again, making money to me didn't equate to wealth, and then I really didn't understand how to actually build wealth until I was well into my 30s. Like I said, I have been making six figures a long time, even before I was a nurse. Like with all my income, like I always had side hustles and all this kind of stuff. So I always made really good money, but I just did not know what to do with that money. But to other people, they thought I had it all figured out because it looked like, because I knew how to make money, I had money. But I knew that it wasn't the same thing because I always felt really broke. So when my daughter, I had my first daughter and she was around one, I had this like moment where I was just like, I got to figure this out. And I have to do the work to understand what real wealth is and how it'll be attainable for me. So I went on this dive of like listening to podcasts, books, everything that I surrounded myself with was in the personal finance space. And started to implement the things that I learned, focused on my debt at first, and then was introduced to the fire movement and really got gung ho about focusing on my investments. And all those lessons along the way, I was like, grew up each one teach one. Let me share these things. Let me share my journey because I wish this information was accessible for me. Also, the information that or the people that I was learning this information from didn't look like me, didn't have the same background as me, and probably couldn't explain it the way that I could explain it to
Mhm.
people that, that I are more relatable to me. So I was just like, I have an obligation to share this information because it's not hard. It's just we don't know these things, and this information is gate kept. And so that's where Financially Intentional was born. As my kids started to grow, they were surrounded by this information as well, and so those conversations became natural, even though they were really, really young. But I started to implement stuff for them that was never implemented for me. Like my kids have three types of investment accounts. We talk about money all the time. They know how to pick investments. So those conversations around money look way different than they did when I was a kid. And so yeah, and I like to share those stories of bankruptcy, the story of divorce, and all of those kind of things, because all of the things that I've accomplished, to paying off $1 million in debt, to having almost $1 million net worth right now, my kids being millionaires in their 20s, like all of those things happen in spite of all those setbacks. Because a lot of people used like to say, well, I can't do this because, and I like to change the narrative to like, no, like you can do it in spite
Yeah, I love
of.
how
So
transparent you are about all of that. I know you recently shared um, about an abusive relationship, and I just think that there's so much on social
mhm.
media, and everything's so glamorized, right? People are sharing their highlight reels. People are sharing all sorts of lies too. Let's be clear, right? Like not everything you see is truth, but we really lean into creators like you who do have such a powerful story to share and are really transparent, because I think so much of the narrative, especially in Black and brown communities, is, well, I didn't learn it and it's too late, or I've got all of these obstacles and I can't do it and it's too
Mhm.
late. And like what we're trying to get across, and I think what you're trying to get across, is it's not too late. And we've all had hardships. They look different for all of us, but that doesn't mean you can't build wealth $1 at a time, right? Like you don't wake up an instant millionaire.
One thing that I really love that you
Exactly.
said is that you've been
Exactly.
making good money for quite some time, but you didn't know how to manage the money. And that's one of the
That's his
biggest
favorite thing to
that's one of the
say.
biggest things that like people have a misconception. People always assume just because someone's good at a certain skill set or a certain career path, they're good at that, and they equate them being able to be good at that and make money with being good with money. And it's two different things. It's two different things between being able to be good at making money
Right.
and being good with money. And I love how you highlighted that, you had this realization that you needed to change. But with that, was there like a certain thing that you can pinpoint where you're like, this happened or whatever it may be, where you're like, I need to change it now?
It's a funny story. So what happened is I don't like owing people money. I don't like borrowing money. But like I said, I had my daughter. I had bought my house. I was making good money, but I had so many things to do. I had a brand new house that needed a new lawn, landscaping, and I had 36 windows. And I remember how many windows I had because I had to pay for window coverings
That's
for all of those windows. And I was like, I am tapped out. So I had to ask my sister for money. And I was like, I make too much money to be asking my sister for money at this age in my 30s. Like, this is too much. Like, this can't happen again. Like, we have to figure out, like, how not to do this. And like I said, my daughter was one. And I'm like, what if something happened to me? Like, what would she have? Like, a whole bunch of debt? I don't want to leave her
No,
with
that's
that.
that's that's amazing because so many people don't
Hmm.
realize when they hear like maybe someone's living paycheck to paycheck, they automatically assume that it's a small paycheck, that they're not making a lot of money. And I'm like, in all honesty, a majority of people live paycheck to paycheck. Just some people's paychecks are 3 or 4 times larger, but they're still living paycheck to
Yes.
paycheck.
Exactly. It does not matter how much you make. And another thing I wanted to point out is that people always want to say that they'll make different money decisions when they make more money instead of starting where they're at. Like, I'll get better with money when I make six figures.
No,
Making six figures does
it's
not
probably going to
make you
make you
better
worse.
at money. So, oh, that's so funny. These crazy emojis
I
are
just
on
saw
here too.
that. Where did that
I
come?
don't
Was that
know.
on your end or on our end? That was funny.
It was me, and I does that with
That's
Apple,
so
but this is
funny.
weird.
No,
Anyway,
that's such a great point, because
yeah.
again, Brandon loves to say, it doesn't matter how much money you make, having more of it doesn't make you better with money. And from the conversations I hear and the frustrations he has, the clients that he has that have a lot of money, they are the worst budgeters. They are the worst savers. Not all of them, but it's the
Right.
teachers and the people who are,
Yes.
working really hard, but, are in fields that traditionally don't earn a lot. They're the ones saving $30,000 a year on a $40,000 salary. Like, how did you do
Well, for
that?
me, the way that I equate it is that I enjoy going to the gym. I'm an avid workout person, and you within that you cannot outwork a bad diet.
Mm.
So no matter how much you
100%.
work out, if you're not
Yes.
eating properly, you're not going to see the results that you want. Same idea with your money. You're not going to be able to out earn bad habits.
Yes. That's 100%. That's what it is.
Where were you spending money to get into debt to then pay off $1 million? Like, where did that money go?
Right. Like, where
Yeah.
how does somebody
I
get
mean,
in $1
aside
million
from a
dollars of debt,
mortgage,
right? Like,
right?
that's
But
always a
yeah.
question, right? Right. It was all normal things, all the things that people told me I was supposed to have, right? So, of course, there's a mortgage. I live in the San Francisco Bay
Mm,
Area. Like, the median mortgage is like $700,000, right? But I had $200,000 in student loan debt. I mean, they told me to go to school by any means necessary. And the only thing that was available for me were loans. So I thought, and so I have two master's degrees. And so I have $200,000 in student loan debt. Um, and just normal stuff, took out money against my 403b to put a down payment on my house, and then cars, medical debt, like other things, but
you're not like
nothing
the Range Rover's
crazy.
not parked in the driveway.
So
Yeah.
it's no,
Yeah.
no, no.
It gets so expensive, and obviously you're in such a high cost of
Yes.
living area too, that just compounds
Hmm.
the things that are part of normal life, right?
Hmm.
Like a place to live and a car or student loans, etc. So it adds up quickly.
But like you said, they don't teach you this stuff. And I would especially say with the student
Yeah.
loan, we were the first generation where student loans were a big thing. So like a lot of people's
Yep.
family had never dealt with that before, so they
Hmm.
didn't even know how to help you deal with it. I'm fortunate in the sense that my mom worked in higher education. My mom was a college professor, so she was much more well versed in regards to how
Nice.
we should navigate that. But for most people, the one thing that I don't like about the student loan conversation is when people are like, "Oh, well, you took the loan out and you should pay it back." I'm like, well,
Or you
in
should know
reality,
how
the
the interest
people's
works, or you,
parents took the loan out and they were
That's the whole thing. They're like, well, I guess if you're smart enough to go to college, you're smart enough to figure out student
no.
loans. That is
no. And
not
that's
true.
so not fair
That
either.
is not true. Like, exactly, exactly. And it seems it's not as black and white as people think as well. Like you said, we're the first generation that, like, actually at 17, 18 years old, were like able to sign up for 6 figures in debt when we weren't guaranteed to be making that money. So why would you blame a 17-year-old versus blaming these loan servicers
And
that
also,
knew what they were doing,
yeah.
that knew that they were putting these people in debt?
Yeah.
So I just think it's,
And
just
even
think
Mhm.
so,
about it
like
like
the
that.
terms and conditions of student loans are that when we took them out were way worse than what's being put out there
Offered
now. They've
now.
learned from their
Hmm.
mistakes. But a lot of people don't realize,
Way,
especially
way,
people who don't have
way.
student loans, that the student loans that were taken out, like I started college in 2001, they were completely different than what is being offered to people now.
Well, they're not as predatory.
Correct.
Yeah,
1999.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
okay, you had your wake up moment. You were like, okay, window treatments for these 36 windows, and now you're going to your sister for money. And so you had this wake up moment. You have a 1 year old. You start immersing yourself in all the financial literacy and education that you could find. Was there anybody along the way, aside from the books and podcasts and things, that was able to help you, or did you seek out additional advice to kind of get that debt reduction journey and just kind of get you on that path of investing? And how did you navigate all of that once you started reading and consuming all of that material?
I literally just started doing all the things that people were mentioning. Like, I didn't seek out a financial advisor. I never had like good experiences with financial advisors. I've tried to have a financial advisor once, and they were just like, "You don't make
Oh,
enough money for me." So I didn't even think that that
Did
was
they
an
say that
option,
to you
right?
just like that?
So I,
Did they say it to you just like that?
you
Because I
holler.
I mean, I work in the industry and I
Pretty
know
much,
how
like,
it can be. So and I hate to hear that experience.
it was just like, well, we only work with people who have like $200,000 liquid to invest. And I was just like, well, that's kind of silly. Like, how do I
If I
even
don't
get there?
invest.
And this is me, like, when I was making $200,000 a year, like, like, so it was very discouraging. So I was like, I guess I'm on my
You seem to figure it out and do all
own.
right.
And so, like,
Yeah.
the first thing that I figured it out, but I
Mhm.
made a lot of mistakes. A lot of costly mistakes unnecessarily, right? Because I did not have anyone to guide me. And the thing is, personal finance is personal. So you can't just follow the blueprint. Like, I found myself like trying to follow a blueprint that wasn't necessarily the right blueprint for me. And I made huge mistakes that cost me six figures, you know, despite, like I said, that's another thing. In spite of, I still achieved these things, but I could be so much further along if I had the right guidance and if I knew that it
Mhm.
didn't have to be like this. But yeah, it was challenging, but I still, like, still I rise, like Maya Angelou says. And that's why I tell people, you don't have to have it all figured out. And yes, you will make mistakes. It's better to have someone that you can be a guidepost, but you know, the best thing to
Yeah,
do is just get
it is
started.
sad because I can go on for hours about how many things I don't like about financial services as far as the old model, but I can give some people hope that I would say I'm on the older end of the younger advisor. So I just turned 40, and there is definitely a different way about going helping people. One, removing that friction as far as an entry
Hmm.
level. So as far as not having minimums that someone has to have in order for you to work with them, and finding different ways that you can actually help people at a much lower cost point, and not just simply putting that wall up and saying like, oh, you don't have enough money so we can't help you. Like, I hate to hear that because that's not at all like how I work. Like, now
Yep.
obviously you have to have a certain amount of money to pay a financial advisor, but in certain scenarios where I've met people where like
Yes.
they're not at that point, I give them a firm list of things that they can work on, and really good guidance in the sense of, hey, you're not quite there yet, but here's A, B, C, D, and E that go ahead, and this is how you can go about doing it. And if you do these things correctly, use these resources that are with this, then you should be able to get to this point.
Definitely, definitely. And even as I'm going through this journey over the last couple of years, like, the barriers to access have totally dropped, like, to be able to invest and to be able to get financial help, like with the fintech and how that's evolved so rapidly. Like, there's no
Mhm.
excuses anymore, especially like as much information is out there. Like, it has exponentially grown just in the
Yeah, I always
last
just say
couple
the
of
hardest
years.
part is what you had stated is personal finance is personal. So being able to weed through all the abundance
Hmm.
of information
Hmm.
and find out what pertains to your specific situation and what would actually work for you, I'd probably say that's the hardest thing because there's an abundance of access to information. It's just a matter of figuring out what
Yeah.
is the right information.
Yeah. Now it's almost an influx if you're,
Yep.
especially if you're trying to consume it. Now it's, if you're looking for it, it's kind of everywhere. And then now you have to discern, ooh, is this correct or
Hmm.
is this not? Or, now that you really have to be mindful of not all information out there is good information. So that's now a whole nother layer that we didn't have before. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, talk to
That's
us
true.
about financially intentional because you have your own podcast, you have, you've authored content, you offer courses. So, you went from each one, teach one. I'm assuming it was like smaller scale. Maybe you're talking to friends and family. And then now you have all these offerings. What was that journey like? And why did you decide to kind of go big and not just keep it for yourself and your circle?
Yeah. So, as much as I talk about being financially intentional, none of this was intentional, like, as far as being a business. And so it's kind of hard because now I'm like backing into like being an entrepreneur. I never like that wasn't like my thing. Like, I'm definitely a side hustler, but like having a formal like entrepreneurial business is like all new to me. And I knew I wasn't equipped, right? But it was kind of like force, for lack of a better word, right? Like, as soon as I started sharing my story, the numbers like were so intriguing. It started getting picked up by media outlets. When it started getting picked up by media outlets, people were like, well, how can I work with you? And I'm like, I don't help people, I can't help you, like, I'm just trying to help myself. And so gradually it got to the point where so many people were asking me. I was like, well, I guess I have to put this thing together. And so it's kind of been like piecemeal, and it is evolved to the point where like fintech companies reach out to me to consult with them. Like, well, now, like, you built this big audience of nurses. You've been able to help people, help us do the same thing on a larger scale. I was like, I'm just a nurse, like, what do I know? But I've had to learn along the way. So a lot of it is like me being asked to do things that I didn't even know were in my wheelhouse, and then figuring it out, and then like back ending it, and making sure that I have the systems in place to be able to support it. But let me tell you something, I will be happy to go back to just being a labor and delivery nurse any day, because this entrepreneurial stuff is really, really hard. But I'm so driven by it, and I'm so motivated to help people that I do it in spite of all of the hurdles that I have to go through, because I know that people need to hear it, and they need to
I'm
hear it
curious
from
to
me.
know. I feel like a lot of people are like, how do you do it all? And my response is always like, well, my tank is always empty. I'm always tired. Don't ask me what's on TV because we don't watch TV, right? Like, we're all like, as soon as, my computer closes for my 9 to 5, it's kids and sugar daddy podcast, right? Like, and then on the weekends. And I mean, I'm sure this is your life too, but couple of follow-up questions. Are you still like working as a nurse? And then are you still doing it all? Like, I mean, obviously you're doing a lot of videos on social media, which are you and your girls. So I know that's you, but like, do you have help in building this empire? You're looking at us like, girl, no, it's just me, me, myself, and I.
For the most part, it's me. I have hired people along the way, and that I have mixed results with that. But most of the time, it's just me. And there's no such thing as balance in my life. Like, if I'm focusing on something, something else is getting less attention. But I have young kids, right? So I have to prioritize them. And so I am still employed as a labor and delivery nurse. I only worked 3 months this year because I was on maternity leave, and maternity leave, by the way, is
No,
not
it
a
is not.
vacation.
No.
Like, I think people think that time off is like, and even we program ourselves to be like, well, I'm not at work, so I can do all of these things. No, like, especially with this pregnancy, I'm
I'm
old, and
I'm
yeah,
old.
I know, because I do it too. You think you have this free time, right? But I had to focus on making sure I was taking care of this baby properly, making sure that I was recovering mentally and physically. And it has been really taxing. So in this time, a lot of things have had to like be put on the back burner, especially like in my business. So my answer is I do what I can when I can, and I stop when I don't feel like it. And that's how things get done. And if things fall off, they'll fall off. Don't worry. Like, listen, I thought like a lot of the money that I make is through brand collaborations and partnerships. And like for a couple years, I posted consistently every day. And when I started to feel bad with this pregnancy, I was like, I'm not doing what I don't feel like doing, and I stopped. And I thought, well, that's going to slow down my money. Actually, it
That's
didn't.
good to know.
That's a plus.
And so like it's just these things that, yeah. It's just these things, that these mental blocks that we have about like taking a break and pulling back, or not going hard 100% in this thing. There's seasons for everything. And right now I'm heavily in the season of like being with my family. I just had a big loss in my family. So like, that's what I'm focused on. And, in the back end, things will work out how they work out in my business. But I don't proclaim to do it all, because I don't, and I
And I
can't,
think
and I
the
won't.
fact that you're so honest about it is only going to keep your audience even more
Mhm.
engaged, right? Because, and like, we're big fans of Tiffany Aliche, the Budgetnista. And obviously, when she suffered her big loss, I mean, she stepped away for a long time, as she should, right? And as she needed to.
Mhm.
And then the episode of their
Mhm.
podcast, Brown Ambition, when she came back, that just won them another Webby, right? Like, people will support
Right.
you taking care of yourself, you taking care of home. you taking care of yours, right? And that doesn't always happen on social media. That's not, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, we're trying to build community and show up for the people who are in community with us, but you're going to be able to do that better when you take care of yourself. So I think that's great. From my perspective, because we've been
Definitely.
following you for quite some time.
It's funny, we were following you separately. Like we didn't know that each other were
Yes,
following
on our
you.
personal accounts too. Yeah. Before we even
I love
started the
it.
podcast, and then we started making a list of all the people we wanted to talk to, and you were on the list, and I was like, "What you know about Naseema?" And he was like, "I've been following her for years." So
Well, within this, financial literacy, like there's more than there have been in the past, but there's still not a lot of people that look like us. So
yeah. So again, we're
Yes,
building that community. We have been supporting you.
exactly.
And from my perspective, I was like, how is she doing these videos with the baby strap to her and all that? I'm like, to me, it never felt like you were gone or that you were taking this long extended break. I mean, my mind, I'm like, how is she doing all these videos all the time? I mean, it's just very, and even when you're traveling with the girls, right? And when you went to FinCon, you're still doing your videos and y'all are dancing and, finding the joy in everyday life. And I just think it's beautiful. So you do you and you take those breaks.
I also think it's a hard thing for. I, I think the issue,
I appreciate
honestly,
it.
resides more within women because of
Always.
society expects you to
Yeah.
basically almost do everything without complaining. So you guys internalize all that so much more than men do. Men are like, oh, if it happens, it happens. It's whatever,
We
So
just try to do too much all the time.
100%. And it's constantly like there's always these things like it's the mom guilt and it's the guilt around my business, it's guilt around this community. There's always some kind of thing that I'm not
Hmm.
doing right, right? Like I've failed myself or failed my kids. And like, there's always these things in my mind, like, oh my God, like why am I like just chilling and watching TV when I know I have this content that I'm supposed to be creating? I have this thing. And I'm just like, because girl, you
Yeah.
need a break. Like, what's gonna happen to you? Like, if something happened to you, who gonna take
Hmm.
care of these kids? At the end of the day, like there'll be somebody, but I want it
Absolutely.
to be me.
Yeah, we've got to set, especially in this content creator world, we have to set our boundaries and we have to just prioritize us and our families and our health and our mental well-being. And we can also see when you're not you, but when we aren't in it for the content, right? When it's like you can see when somebody's like posting to post or
Yeah,
uninspired versus, hey, this genuinely looks like a happy video. I can tell that they were excited to create this, etc. Right? Like it will come through in your content. So you might as well just take the break that you need and come back
yeah,
refreshed. So, well,
exactly,
what is next for
exactly.
Naseema and financially intentional? What can we help celebrate?
Oh my goodness. You know what? Just celebrate the fact that I am still here right now because like listen, I am still in straight up survival mode. I'm just looking forward to um bringing more to the community, like really like gung ho, like refining everything. Like I said, like I've had to back in a lot of things, and I know that there are systems that could be put in place to make it more optimal for people to experience all the content and all the things that I have. So, like, just look forward to like financially intentional, just doing a revamp and really trying to make sure that people are getting the information that they need and the access that they need to be in the coming year. But right now, don't look forward to much because they ain't much
We will
coming
let you rest
out.
in this season because it is what you need. You still have a brand new baby, so get your
Yes.
rest, get your sleep. Content can wait. We will be here waiting and supporting you and rooting for you whenever you are ready, girlfriend. Okay?
And I appreciate all the love. Let me tell you, I have had a really huge downpouring of love, and I feel it all, even if I don't respond. Like, I really have some real, true, like, supporters. Like, I even just appreciate you guys mentioning how long you've been following me because that means the world to me. Because I'm just like, little old me, like, who cares about what I have to say? Like, it's still a lot of that imposter syndrome. So I really appreciate that. And like, I really appreciate people understanding that, I can't be 100%
No, we
all
are
the
here. We
time.
will understand. We are going to rock with you in in all of the seasons, whatever those look like. So we are so glad that you carved
Yes.
out some time with us today when you could have been resting. So that means the world to us. And we're so glad to share this message with our community. And we'll just be rooting for you along the way. So thank you for being with us today.
I am so honored to be here. I don't take it lightly that you asked me, so I really appreciate you guys.